especially thank my class, URI 101, Section 122, for doing such a fabulous job marketing the event. I applaud you guys. Did a great job. So I am so excited to introduce Meghan Rothschild to you all. She came all the way from Massachusetts to be here, and Meghan's story is one that I hope will resonate with you. Y'all know that I have a vested interest in the topic as well, since I am a melanoma survivor too, and did a lot of the tanning booths when I was young and really kind of paid the price for it. So this project really is close to my heart, and I'm glad that she can share her story. As you know, because you all have looked at her bio, I'm sure, from our marketing efforts, but she's been working on spreading awareness of melanoma for 6 years now, since she was diagnosed with stage 2 cancer at the age of 20. And she spent a lot of time in tanning booths as well, and I think just wants to share her story with you all tonight. Meghan actually came to campus last year, and that's when I learned of her, and I started to follow her story on her website and was just fascinated that her speaking career, I think, has just sort of blossomed. And so she's been on world news with Charlie Gibson and all sorts of national broadcasts, and has been profiled in many magazines and photographed. And so I'm excited that her story continues to spread kind of like wildfire, I think, at this point. So thank you so much for coming. This is Meghan.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to scoot over here real quick. I'm really excited to be here. As Linda said, this is my actually second time coming to the URI campus, but I'm familiar with Rhode Island. I went to school at Roger Williams University in Bristol, so I love the state, and I love any opportunity that I can kind of come back here and talk to you guys. So I'm going to start real quick with just a brief PSA. So there's a lot of, I hear a lot of people saying that's scary. There's a lot of scary statistics actually in that PSA. The first being that by visiting a tanning booth just once a month, your risk of melanoma increases by 75%. So don't be shy when I ask this, but by a show of hands, how many people have actually used an indoor tanning salon before? Okay, obviously I'm probably one of the biggest culprits as I'm standing here telling you my story today. My story actually starts when I was 17 years old. I started using the tanning salons. I would go only once a week. A lot of people say to me, you must have been really addicted to tanning. You must have, completely been going all the time. I know people who go 2-3 times a week. I know people who go every day. And I was only going once a week, and I ended up with melanoma. So the reason I started tanning, which I'm sure a lot of people here can relate to tonight, is I hated my fair complexion. You look up at me, I'm clearly Irish. I have red hair. I've got fair skin. I'm total Irish girl. And I really, really hated it in high school. All my friends who go to the beach, they'd get a really nice tan. They could wear any color they wanted to. It would look good with their complexion. And I was kind of like the odd man out. I could wear browns, greens, and blues. And for those of you who are pale, understand that. And it absolutely killed me that they could go and get a great tan. So I spoke with an actual nurse who was a family friend at the time. And I had told her about my desire to start using tanning beds. And sitting there with my mother beside me, she informed us that she went all the time and that tanning was actually a really great way to get your vitamin D, and that it was a safe, controlled way to get sun exposure. So now that was, at this point, 8-9 years ago. So things have obviously changed significantly, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I started using those tanning salons based on the fact that she told me it was a safe alternative to the sun. So I'd spend about 20 minutes a week in the tanning booths, and I completely became addicted to tanning. And what I mean by addicted is I didn't have a physical urge that I needed to get there. I had a mental urge that I had to maintain the tan that I had achieved. Within a few months of using tanning beds, I had a really nice tan. I loved the way that my skin looked. And I mentally just told myself that I had to get there every week because I didn't want to go back to being the pale, fair, redheaded girl. So I did that for about 2.5 years, and I actually, like I was telling you before, I went to Roger Williams University. And I was so kind of mentally in that addictive mode to tanning that we actually weren't allowed to have cars on campus freshman year. So I would take the school-provided shuttle to the nearest tanning salon. It was like 2.5-hour ordeal every Saturday morning. They would drop me off. They'd leave. I'd have to wait 45 minutes for them to come back. And it was really just this absurd waste of my time when I could have been spending it with friends or doing homework or other important things. I knew that I had to get to the tanning booth once a week. So after about 2.5 years of that same behavior, I went home during our winter break in the month of December, and I went for my regular physical. So basically just like you go to a doctor once a year to get a general checkup, I went to see my doctor that I'd had for years, and I pointed out this suspicious mole on my stomach. And the reason that I pointed it out was because it had gotten really, really dark, like black, and it had started to itch, which at the time when I was actually diagnosed was not a sign of melanoma, but they have now since found that itching actually is an indicator of melanoma. So, and I don't mean to freak anyone out. As I talk, you're probably going to freak out about some stuff. Don't freak out. You're going to be like looking. I'm going to see everyone going like this. So it didn't have irregular borders. I like to call that out, and I'm going to go over the kind of the ABCDEs of melanoma. And my mole really didn't meet a lot of the usual suspects of melanoma, but it was really dark. So my doctor took a look at it, and she kind of shrugged it off and said, no big deal. You don't have to get that removed. It looks fine. And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. I don't see any irregularity with it. You're good. And I'm like, nah, I don't feel right about it. I'm going to have it taken off. So I went in, had the mole removed, and actually went directly from the doctor's office to the tanning salon. And I remember thinking, this sucks. I'm totally going to have a tan line from the steri strips that were across my stomach, holding the stitches in. So my mentality was anything but taking that seriously. I'm like, this is not going to be skin cancer. It's no big deal. It's just a mole being taken off, even though I didn't feel right about it. So I went in 2 weeks later. I have the stitches out, and this doctor came in, and my parents had they were on vacation, and my friend had said, do you want me to go with you? And I'm like, no, I'm just getting stitches out. It's no big to do. I'd had stitches removed before, so I really didn't think anything of it. And I ended up going into the doctor's office not realizing that the next hour of my life was pretty much going to be a defining point for me at the age of 20. Went in, doctor comes in, and he's like, do you have someone here with you? And I'm like, I remember thinking, it's strange, I'm just getting stitches out. And I said, no, it's just me. And he said, there's no one in the waiting room that I can go get for you? And I'm like, no, what's going on? And he sits down and he says, well, you have melanoma. Now, imagine being 20 years old, you're kind of in like the prime of your college years, and your doctor starts saying things to you like cancer, survival rate, lymph node extraction, major scarring, interferon. He's throwing out all these major medical words, and all I could think of was, you're an idiot, you did this to yourself. I knew from the minute that I was told I had melanoma that the behavioral choices that I made when I was 17 years old had impacted my life now. You start throwing out questions in your mind of, am I going to live through this? Am I going to need chemo? Am I going to need radiation? What's going to happen? But imagine being 20 years old and wondering, am I going to survive for the next couple of years? So the doctor basically explained that I would have to undergo this major surgery and do what they call clear the margins. And what clearing the margins means is they actually go to the area where the mole was located, and they cut out a huge chunk of skin located around the mole. And the reason that they do that is they have to make sure that the melanoma hasn't spread to surrounding areas on your skin. But the really scary part of melanoma, and the way that it becomes a deadly form of cancer, is it actually can travel inside your body. So when people say to me, you just had skin cancer, that's no big deal, right? They don't really fully comprehend that skin cancer, actually, melanoma, can actually kill you. So I had to go in, I had to get 8 lymph nodes removed, 7 from under my left and 1 from under my right, because what happens is if melanoma spreads into your lymph node system, the lymph nodes actually bring the cancer to surrounding organs. So people who die of melanoma die because it's metastasized to the brain or to the liver or to the lungs, and the cancer ends up attacking that organ. So I went in for the surgery on Friday the 13th, and I remember that because my mother was really livid that they put my surgery date on Friday the 13th. But they got me in almost immediately. It was like a 4-week period of time that I had been diagnosed where they were like, we need to get her in really quickly, which is a scary thing. anyone who's had any type of surgery and they demand that you come in within a month, it's kind of a frightening thing. So I was traveling back and forth from Roger Williams home about once or twice a week, kind of doing blood tests and doctor's appointments, talking about family history. I had to do what they call a radioactive dye injection. I had to get that done twice. And what happens is they actually inject you with a radioactive dye right around the area where the mole is located, and then they stick you under this machine that watches which lymph nodes pick it up. And those are the lymph nodes they have to actually go in and cut out when they do the actual surgery. It was one of the most painful experiences of my life. It burned throughout my entire chest, up into my neck. It felt like I was literally internally on fire. So I went in, they tagged 8 lymph nodes that they thought needed to be taken out. I ended up with over 75 stitches both internally and externally from the surgery. And that's both on my abdomen, under both arms, and on my back right shoulder, because I had another one that came back as severely dysplastic, which is the step before melanoma, that had to be removed during that surgery as well. The picture that you see up here, it's actually one of the grossest parts of my surgery. It's tubing that actually had to be sewed into my incisions. And the reason is because when you remove lymph nodes and you have major surgery like this, your body can actually, its response is to swell. And swelling can prevent healing, and it can cause complications. So I woke up, they didn't really tell me that I was going to have the tubing. So that was kind of interesting. I woke up and I'm like, why is there a net up to my neck? What's going on down here? And then they informed me that every 3 hours I would have to empty these tubes. So I'd have to go waddle over to the sink, unplug them, dump out this disgusting lymphatic blood fluid mixture, and then waddle back. And every 3 hours I had to do that. So I remember thinking when they kind of explained to me that these tubes are actually inside your body, they're in the incision, I remember thinking, how are they going to get them out? So I go 2 days after my major surgery for kind of like the post-surgical consult. They were going to take some stitches out. And the, pardon my French, jackass doctor who did this surgery, who I don't see anymore, looked at me and said, this is going to hurt. And I said, what's going to hurt? And he put his hand on my stomach and he ripped the tubes out of my incisions. So needless to say, luckily, I didn't feel the one coming out of my stomach. I still don't have full feeling back in my stomach, and I never will, because my nerve endings are so beyond damaged from the removal of the skin that I can't feel that. I did feel the one coming out from under my right arm, which was not pleasant. So now that I've had melanoma, kind of what are the next steps? I had to go see an oncologist, which is specifically a cancer specialist, who would basically tell me, in conjunction with what the dermatologist was saying, that sun, tanning booths, being outside, done. You're done. You're 20 years old. You're done sunbathing. You're done going out in the sun. I see a dermatologist now. I put 2 times a year up there because that's what I'm allotted to go, but I actually see the dermatologist probably 4 to 5 times a year. Once you've had melanoma, you're at a greater risk to get it again. So if you don't take every single proper precaution that you need to, you're most likely to get melanoma again. So can't go out in the sun, no tanning, no sunbathing, none of that, out for good. So up here is kind of what I do every 6 months, but as I said, that's kind of an average. Sometimes I go every other month, every 3 months. This is what happens. They see a mole on my body, or I see a mole on my body that I don't like, and in order for it, me to prevent it from becoming melanoma, it literally has to be cut off my body. So I have about 30, 35 scars from minor surgeries that I've had since my major surgery. And this is what it is. It's a shot of Novocaine, and then it's a razor, or it's a cut. And so I have endless amounts of scars, and there's a really nasty one on my arm that I just got done from getting this done, like I said, a couple times a year. That's the one on my arm that I just had done about a couple weeks ago, and I like to kind of call attention to this one because these aren't melanoma. I should probably make a point to say that. These are moles that come back sometimes they come back as just a freckle. Sometimes they come back as nothing. Sometimes they come back as severely dysplastic or moderately dysplastic, which is what this one came back as. And severely dysplastic, like I said before, is the step before melanoma. And this mole I actually demanded to have taken off. My dermatologist told me it looked fine, and it was the step before melanoma. So if I had let it go, there's a chance it could have become melanoma. And with my history, there's a good chance that it probably would have. So up here is what you actually got if you had a chance to go out and stick your face in the lovely skin machine out there. On your right-hand side is all the sunspots that I have underneath the top layer of skin on my face caused by tanning. Those spots may come to the surface one day. They may not. They may become cancerous. They may not. It's kind of a guessing game. There's really nothing I can do about those spots. And that's really the most frustrating part for me because I try to lead a really healthy lifestyle nowadays. And to see this photo and to see all those that damage, that permanent damage that I've done to myself and just know there's nothing I can do is really pretty frustrating. So some facts about melanoma. It's one of the most common cancers, and as well, actually you didn't see this one in the PSA, but it is the most common form of cancer for young adults aged 25 to 29. It's the second most common form of cancer for young women ages 15 to 29, which is really scary. Because this used to be a cancer that affected older men, usually golfers, guys who were outside all the time without hats or without SPF. And now because of the trend of wanting to be tan and using tanning salons, it's a young woman's cancer. It's no longer an older gentleman's cancer. The chance of developing it does increase with age, especially if you don't protect yourself from the sun, but it affects people of all ages, obviously. In men, it's often found on the trunk, which is the area between the shoulders and the hips, or the head and the neck. And in women, it's often developed on the lower legs. So if you think about it, it's areas where the sun is kind of hitting us at all times, especially in the warmer months, which is another reason why they kind of know that my excessive tanning beds and being out in the sun and whatnot was the reason for my melanoma, because it was on my abdomen. It's a very rare place to have melanoma. And I talked a little bit about this. When melanoma spreads, how it becomes deadly. It goes to the lymph nodes bring it to an organ, and then the cancer attacks that organ. More than 1 million new cases of skin cancer are going to be diagnosed this year, and that does include basal cell and squamous cell, which are two more common forms of skin cancer, but not as deadly forms of skin cancer. And 1 American dies of melanoma almost every hour. It's every 50 minutes. I got to put her up there. Snooki, she's awesome. But in all fairness to Snooki, I really do need to take her down because they had an intervention with the Jersey Shore kids. Who watches Jersey Shore? Don't lie. Okay. I do too. And they did an intervention, the Skin Cancer Foundation, with them, and they aged them. This is like what scared them. They talked about the dangers of melanoma and dying of skin cancer, and they kind of were like, oh, that sucks. And then they aged them with a progressive, like a computer program, and they were like, oh my God, I'm not going tanning anymore. So she uses spray tans now. So she's smart. We'll see how far that gets her. But the real facts about tanning, I like to put this up here just because if you were to walk into a tanning salon right now and say, is this safe? They would lie, and they would tell you yes, and they're outright lying. It is not safe to use a tanning salon. There is no such thing as a safe tan. On an average day, more than 1 million people in the U.S. are going to tan in tanning salons, and 70% of those people are girls and women with the age group of 16 to 29, which is the direct age that melanoma rates are increasing. So there's a direct correlation between the two. The United States Department of Health has actually declared UV radiation from not only the sun but also from tanning beds as a known carcinogen. And that actually just happened about a year ago. I've been doing this for 6 years, and it was up until, like I said, about a year ago I could finally say that tanning beds cause cancer because there was such a controversy as to whether or not UV radiation actually caused skin cancer. And now it has been declared that it is a known carcinogen. So the vitamin D debate. For most people, 5 to 10 minutes of unprotected sun 2 to 3 times a week is plenty to get your vitamin D. So you don't need to use a tanning salon to get a vitamin D, even in the cold winter New England months. And if you feel like you're not getting enough vitamin D, there's plenty of supplements or plenty of ways to eat fish, milk, orange juice, things like that, that will boost up your vitamin D levels. There's no reason to put yourself in harm's way and damage the largest organ in your body in order to get vitamin D. So a lot of people don't actually know this, but Bob Marley died of melanoma. There's a lot of people who think that because they have a darker complexion, they're safe from melanoma. Melanoma actually, it's less frequent in African American people, but it's more likely to kill because they get a different type of melanoma. And that melanoma, instead of growing out horizontally on the skin so you can visually see it change, it grows vertically into the skin. And that's how it gets picked up quicker by lymph nodes. So Bob Marley actually had it on his toe. And because of his religious beliefs, he felt that you needed to be whole-bodied in order to go to heaven. So he refused to let them amputate his toe. And that's how he passed away. John McCain has had it, I think 5 or 6 times. He's had it multiple times. And Marcia Cross, I like to put her up here because she had a best friend who died of melanoma, but she's also a really great, beautiful role model for fair skin, for having the pale complexion. So the ABCDEs of melanoma, asymmetrical. Basically, if you were to cut the mole in half and fold it on top of itself, would it match up perfectly? If it would not, it's cause for concern. It's something that you want to have a dermatologist look at. If the border's irregular or tend to be uneven, or the edges are kind of what they call scalloped, again, another risk factor. Color. Mine was really, really dark, like I told you guys before, but melanoma can also be blue or red. And obviously, if it's really, really dark in appearance, if it's black in appearance, you want to get it checked out. If the diameter is larger than the size of a pencil eraser, that's also cause for concern. And evolving, if it changes, if it starts to itch, bleed, or if it just gets a little bit bigger, gets raised, like this one on my arm was starting to raise, starting to bump up, any type of change should definitely be, you should bring attention to it. So what can you guys do to protect yourself and to, make sure that this doesn't happen to you? Definitely wearing a sunscreen of SPF 30 or above at all times, even in the winter months, even when it's raining out, when it's overcast. It's really, really easy to get SPF nowadays, built right into a moisturizer that you're probably already using, and that's for men and women. I have some samples out there of Eucerin, it's a built-in body moisturizer with an SPF already in it. It is only a 15 SPF, but it's still better than nothing. And it means you don't have to do a second coat. Like you don't have to put your lotion on and then go ahead and put another coat of sunscreen on. It makes it really easy for you. You want to limit your sun exposure. I tell people that they don't have to hide out, because I didn't hide out. I came from a business that I had to be outside doing events all the time. I run events now, so there's a lot of outdoor work that I have to do. And you don't have to hide out. Just be smart about it and make sure you kind of protect yourself. Visit a dermatologist once a year. Even if you don't have a mole or you don't have something that you're kind of concerned about, it's still really good to see a dermatologist once a year. Just basically because they're really the experts. Like I told you guys, my doctor was kind of like, it looks fine. The dermatologist is really the one who specializes in skin, and they know what to look for. Know your family history. If you do have a family history of melanoma, you are at a greater risk. So although I didn't have one and I still got it, anyone who's got a grandparent, a brother or sister, or a parent who's had it, or even an aunt and uncle, you're at an increased risk of getting melanoma. Do a self-skin body exam once a month. So basically, you want to take care, you want to notice your moles, you want to notice if you have any changes in your skin, and you really have to be an advocate for your own health. And if you don't like something, you need to have it removed. So there's demand to have it removed, because that's what I've done every time, and almost every time I've been right. So it is kind of scary to think that you're really in charge of your own health, but unfortunately that's what it comes down to. So why should you guys care? Tim is a really great compliment to my story, and he's actually from Newport, and he went here. He graduated from URI, and he was diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma. Never used a tanning bed in his life. He just liked to be out in the sun. Surfer, like I said, lived in Newport, and he ended up having stage 3. He likes to tell people that a shark bit him, but he's full of crap. And that's his skin graft. Not only did he have to have a skin graft, but he had to have what they call interferon, which is, as of right now, the only FDA-approved treatment for someone who has melanoma that's past the stage 2. And that's really scary, because if interferon doesn't work for you, your options are limited. There's some experimental drugs, but interferon is really it. And that's kind of like, they call it, one woman who I know who had it done, she would call it her interferon cocktail. You literally have to inject it into your body, and it's a fluid, and it wipes you out, makes you sick, all the normal stuff that comes, unfortunately, with chemo and radiation. Glenna Cole, I use a lot of Rhode Island people, but she actually graduated from Salve Regina. She passed away from melanoma at the age of 26. She found a lump in her groin area. She thought it was kind of sport-related, went in, had a biopsy done, and it came back as stage 3 melanoma. And although she fought over and over again for 3 years, Glenna died at the age of 26 in 2008. So this disease affects people just like you and me, people in this age group. It's not something that happens to the older generation anymore. So if you guys are interested in getting more involved in this cause, you think it's a good thing to get involved with, there's actually two really great opportunities. The first is Your Skin is In, which I do believe that URI participated in last year. But that basically is a program put on by the Melanoma Foundation of New England that asks people to sign a pledge stating that they won't go tanning before spring break. Obviously spring break, everyone's like, oh, I got to get my base tan because that's safe. You know, base tan's great. That way you won't burn. So that's a great program, and you can actually find out information about that at the mfne.org. You get all sorts of prizes. There's all sorts of like airline tickets and photo shoots and all sorts of crazy stuff that you can win by getting a majority of your classmates to sign the petition. So it's a great program for school groups or health advocates on campus or something like that. The other thing is to sign the Eucerin Skin First Pledge. How many of you guys are familiar with the Eucerin, the product line? A couple of you. So they've been around for 25 plus years. They're an international company, and they just created this Skin First Pledge, which basically asks you to sign a statement, saying that you're going to take your skin health just as seriously as you would take your regular health. And like I said before, I do have samples out there, so it's definitely come by the table and grab a sample before you leave. And then go check it out on Facebook. They have some really cool tips. They post pretty much daily new tips on how to take care of your skin, and they really also emphasize going to see a dermatologist as well. So do you guys have any questions? Yes?
What do you think is worse, going tanning, like in a tanning bed with like SPF on, or going in the sun with no SPF?
That's a good question. Well, I can tell you that the tanning bed emits 3 to 6 times the radiation of the sun. So going into a tanning booth for 20 minutes is like being on the beach unprotected for 3 hours. But if you were to go into a tanning booth with SPF, I honestly don't know. A lot of people ask me that question. I don't know anyone who would do that because it would completely defeat the purpose of them going into the tanning booth. But there might be some people who think if I throw on some SPF, this will protect me. It's still not a good thing to do. And then, of course, unprotected on the beach is also not a very good thing to do. So I say they're equally as bad. Yes. Oh, yes. I can go to, yeah. I don't my family loves the Cape. I love Rhode Island. I come down here when I can. I still go to the beach, but I wear a hat. I put my sunblock on. You're supposed to reapply your sunblock every 2 hours, and it should be a full, I always use shot glass when I'm talking to college kids, a full shot glass size worth of suntan lotion that you should apply to your entire body. And even if it's water resistant or it's sport proof, it still needs to be reapplied every 2 hours. So as long as I'm keeping up and I'm doing that, yeah, I can definitely go to the beach.
What are the numbers for the SPF?
Minimum, dermatologists recommend a minimum of 30 SPF. That's kind of like the bare minimum that you should be using. But I always say kind of any SPF 15 and above is better than none. The SPF 4, the SPF 7, the SPF 8, all those kind of like tanning oils with SPF, that doesn't really do anything. There really is no sun protectant factor in those. So definitely 30 and above if you have the opportunity, but if all you have access to is 15 SPF, just make sure you reapply it frequently. It's a good question, though. Any other questions? No?
Do you enjoy the beach anymore?
I do. Yeah, the beach, beach is relaxing. You don't necessarily. I honestly, to be perfectly honest with you, I never enjoyed tanning on a beach because it always took me hours to get any type of color. Tanning booth was like in, out, boom, I'm done for the week, and I look great, awesome. So I never even really enjoyed the beach for that reason. I enjoyed the beach to relax.
Would you go spray tanning?
I do. I've used all. There's actually out on this table here. Thank you for asking that. First of all, Mobile Envy that's here, amazing spray tans. Hands down, one of the best spray tans I've ever had in my life. If you're thinking about spray tan, but you're kind of freaked out about it, a lot of people are like, I don't want to turn orange. I don't want it to look fake. Her tans are amazing. Second of all, if you're not interested in doing the spray tan thing, you're a little bit uncomfortable with that, you want something that you can apply to yourself. I recommend Clarins, and I have 4 of my top favorite sunless tanners that you can apply yourself out on that table with reviews that kind of talks about the pros and the cons. So definitely I recommend taking a look at that. I still try new sunless tanners whenever I can. There's a ton that just came out on the market. The Kardashians just released a sunless tanner that I want to try. There's Sky Limit is another one that I have to try. So there's a lot of products out there, and they're past the orange. So don't think that you're going to turn orange anymore. they've gotten way past that. The technology has improved, and they get it now. So, but Clarins, hands down, best sunless tanner, self-applied sunless tanner. Great question. And those are safe. They don't have SPF in them, though. So don't put it on and think you got a base tan and you're fine, because it's not actually what happened. Any other questions?
How long does the spray tan last?
This lasts about 5 to 7 days. One that you apply yourself will probably be about the same, but you can, what I always say is good to do is get one of her spray tans and then buy something where you can just kind of keep it up. But yeah, it's about 7 days on average for most spray tans and most self. The self might wear off a little bit quicker, and you should always exfoliate before a spray tan and you should have clean skin. No lotion, no makeup, no nothing. All good questions, so. Well, thank you guys very much. I hope you learned something tonight. I'll be around if you have any questions you didn't feel comfortable asking in public, so thank you. Go check out all the booths.